Hello everyone, Salt here. Welcome to the video. Today we are going to be going over the Basmu. Now, in this weapon series, I take a weapon, I build it out, and I test that weapon on its own merits, meaning I don't mix it with any kind of external factors that would increase weapon performance. That would be things like Warframe abilities, pets putting statuses on enemies, anything like that. I just test the weapon built out by itself, and I let the viewer make their own intelligent conclusions about those external things. Things like, hey, Salt put viral on the weapon, but I'm going to be using Nourish, so maybe I'll use a different element. Things like that. So let's get into the Basmu. So the Basmu is a primary assault rifle. It is a battery weapon, which means that you don't have to worry about ammo. It'll just recharge itself. Then it's got some other quirky things about it. We'll go into the build here and we'll explain them. So the Basmu is going to have two firing modes, an alt fire and a primary fire. And like a lot of weapons, they're a little bit different to each other, so they're going to be built a little bit differently. And so we're probably going to have two videos on the Basmu. So I'll do the Basmu primary fire today, and then either tomorrow or later in the week. Well, actually, today is Friday, so either Monday or later in the week next week, I'll do the alternate fire. So for the primary fire, the shots out of the Basmu are going to explode. So the direct shots are going to have innate electricity, and the explosion is going to have innate heat. So those are the quirky things about the primary fire, that it comes with innate electricity on direct, and it comes with innate heat on radials. Again, it's a battery weapon. When you fully deplete the magazine out of the Basmu, it will pulse 3 times and deal a small amount of true damage to enemies around you. I think it's like 10-meter radius. So 10-meter radius, it'll deal pulse of true damage, and every enemy hit, it'll do 10 times that true damage as healing to you. So it's a very small amount of true damage. I think it's 10 true damage. So if I look at the unique trait here, I think it just says 100 health per enemy. I don't know that true damage can be multiplied by anything, so it might just be straight up 100 health, or it could be more maybe. I'm not too sure about that. But it gives a little bit of healing. So that's if you expend the magazine. So if you expend the entire battery, you go down to 0, and you go into its longer reload animation, it'll do that pulse wave. Now, to fill up from 0, it's going to take 2 seconds to go from 0 to, I believe it's 21. Yep, magazine of 21. It's going to take 2 seconds. It is a lot quicker if you can just let it charge without going down to 0. So like, let's say you were to shoot this thing and you go down to 1 bullet instead of 0. It's going to take like a second or less to charge back up to 21. So for maximum DPS, you actually don't want to be going all the way down to 0 on the magazine. You'll lose out on that healing pulse, but you'll be increasing your DPS. At the end of the day, it's not that big of a deal. I mean, it's a 1 second difference on the reload, but if you really want to min-max this, you do not want to go all the way down to 0 in the magazine. And I think that is about it for the quirky things. Again, it explodes on hitting an enemy, which means that our normal fire rate mods that we use, called Prime Shred, is not really going to work. So most weapons that explode when they hit a target, punch through will not work normally on them. And so, we're not using Prime Shred because of that. This weapon has a very high fire rate already, and so we're actually not going to be using a fire rate mod either, which is a little bit weird for my builds, because most of my builds for primaries, especially on assault rifles like this one, I would almost always use a fire rate mod. Well, this one is very quick, so it doesn't really need fire rate. And if you put a fire rate mod on here, all that happens is that you're blowing through that battery so quickly. You're probably wasting shots too, because you're probably overshooting targets that are already dead. And you're giving yourself more of a, like, it becomes more uncontrollable, where you can't really control getting down to like 1 or 2 bullets in the mag before you let it recharge. So I don't think fire rate is the best way to go on this. The other quirky thing that I did forget is galvanized aptitude. So On most weapons, galvanized aptitude is additive, and on this weapon's primary fire, so not the alternate fire, but its primary fire mode, galvanized aptitude is multiplicative. And so that is a large damage increase. It's like a faction damage buff, like a roar buff, basically. It just gets factored in later in the equation, which gives it more damage, basically. So it's going to increase the direct damage by quite a lot. Now remember, galvanized aptitude, this is only direct damage. So this is not really going to be affecting your radial targets. But it's still such a powerful effect, it's worth having on this this build. Okay, let's go through the mods here. So we're going to have Galvanized Chamber for multi-shot, Galvanized Aptitude for status chance and direct damage per status type affecting the target, unique status type affecting the target. And again, this is the direct damage. The status chance will work on everything, even the radial, but the direct damage, it is only going to work on the actual target you're shooting at. Galvanized Scope is going to increase our crit chance. This is not a super heavy crit weapon, but using Galvanized Scope gets us into full yellows. Without Galvanized Scope, we're kind of, I'm just going to kind of pull what I think is the right numbers. Without Galvanized Scope, it looks to me more like 70-30, like 70% yellows, 30% whites. And the problem with white non-criticals is that they don't get factored into critical equations. You're not getting any of the critical multipliers added, anything like that. So having one mod that ensures that 30% of your shots have their damage applied to crit equations, I think is very powerful. So even though this is not a heavy crit weapon, I think the fact that this affects 30% of your shots is still worth having this mod. Sorry. So the next mod here, this is going to be a weird one. And I did a lot of testing on this slot. And so most of my builds, especially for assault rifles, they end up in viral at the end here. Or corrosive if you're doing Whispers content. But with this weapon, because Galvanized Aptitude is multiplicative, you have another option. You have the option to just straight up add another element. Now, it's not super easy to add elements on this weapon because it has innate electricity. So, you know, like let's say we wanted to just do corrosive, for instance. You know, we took off rhyme rounds, we put this here. That would make corrosive, but then we're losing electricity. That's less unique statuses on the target. So it's a little bit messy. And then because the game reads it left to right, you know, if we were like, okay, corrosive radiation, maybe I can try to add heat here. Heat, and then we try to put a heat mod in here. It starts reading it weirdly because the game reads it left to right. So it's not going to do what we want it to do. We end up with gas, radiation, electricity, which is, you know, weird as hell. So let me take these two off here. Or put my cold mod back on, rhyme rounds. So with the new Whispers content, they came out with a new mod called Radiated Reload that just straight up gives you a combined element. And so this gives us the opportunity to add another element without it trying to do weird things with the innate electricity. So, not that we actually want radiation. Like radiation, I mean, it's an okay element. It's not a it's not a bad element. We're not technically trying to go for radiation. It's just the fact that we want another element for Galvanized Aptitude to work multiplicatively on, and that's why we're going with Radiated Reload. The other option, so I came down to like 3 mods basically. Came down to Radiated Reload, Serration, and Bladed Rounds. And out of Serration and Bladed Rounds did better. So then it was Bladed Rounds versus Radiated Reload. And they're both very good. Bladed Rounds, just for people that don't know, I'll bring up Bladed Rounds here. Bladed Rounds is going to increase your crit damage. Because with Galvanized Scope, everything is a crit now. That is pretty good on this weapon. It ends up being very close to the amount of damage Radiated Reload does, actually. So they're extremely similar. Now, the positive thing with Bladed Rounds is that Bladed Rounds actually affects everything. You know, that crit damage also gets applied to the radial attack, Whereas the radiated reload is basically just boosting the galvanized aptitude, which is your direct damage. Now, it's very powerful because it's multiplicative, and I think that's why it ends up beating out bladed rounds. But keep in mind, bladed rounds would do better on the radial. So, a little bit of an over-explanation there, but I ended up with radiated reload, but bladed rounds is another okay option. Critical delay for crit chance, vital sense for crit damage, just our simple crit chance, crit damage mods. And then finally, we're going to go for viral. So we're going to have toxin and cold 60/60s to make viral. Now in the Exilus slot, we're using stabilizer. So with our arcane, just to kind of, I'm going to come back to stabilizer here. But with our arcane primary deadhead, we get negative weapon recoil with it, but the weapon still has like slight recoil, and so I use stabilizer to completely get rid of the rest of the recoil. I like doing that, but there are other options, and I want to go over them because maybe you don't like stabilizer and maybe you want to use the other options. The other options are extremely viable. So the first one here is Vigilante Supplies. So 5% chance to enhance critical hits from primary weapons. This is going to give you a slight DPS buff. So stabilizer is just straight up a quality of life buff. It doesn't actually increase your DPS. Vigilante Supplies will increase your DPS slightly. So 5% chance basically equates into 1 out of 20 of your shots will go from a yellow to an orange crit, which is going to have more of like a times effect basically to it. And that's also with multi-shot too. So you can't just look at it as like, you know, oh, well, one shot in the magazine is going to be an orange instead of a yellow. No, it's probably going to be more than one shot because you have multi-shot too. So Vigilante Supplies is a very good option. If you don't care about the little recoil left over, Vigilante Supplies will technically give you a little tiny bit of a DPS buff. It's not big, it's very, very small, but it is technically a DPS buff. And then the other option is more of another quality of life option, and that's terminal velocity. The projectiles do have travel speed. They're not very slow, like they're actually kind of fast, so I think this is the weakest option out of the three. So I actually like Stabilizer. Out of these two quality of life mods right here, I actually like Stabilizer better. Because the bullets kind of already move kind of fast, but if you want them to move like almost hit scan fast, terminal velocity will get you there. But I think the best options are going to be Vigilante Supplies or Stabilizer. I'm going to personally choose Stabilizer for the quality of life, but if you like the little more DPS, Vigilante Supplies is perfect. Of course, the actual effect of Vigilante Supplies is not needed whatsoever. So I kind of glanced over that, right? I was just looking at the bottom. The actual effect of convert secondary ammo pickups is completely not needed on the Basmu. It's a battery weapon. Just completely forget about that. It's the critical hits from primary weapon is the one I was looking at. Okay. Arcane, we're going to go for primary deadhead. It's going to give us more headshot multiplier. This weapon doesn't have a great headshot multiplier, but it's just a little bit extra. And it's going to decrease weapon recoil, which is going to help with Stabilizer to completely get rid of the recoil. And it's going to give us a 360% flat damage increase. That is it. So that is the build for the Basmu. I'll do the alternate fire. I'll show the alternate fire during the video, but I'm not going to play mostly with it. I'm going to be playing with the primary fire. But the alternate fire is kind of like a chain beam. And it's, I mean, if you look here, oh my goodness, that critical multiplier is juicy on that alt fire. But look at the critical chance. It's kind of like the same as the Kuva new core. The Kuva new core is very similar, where it's got a really bad crit chance, but it's got a crazy crit multiplier. So when we do the Basmu alternate fire, it's going to be a little bit of a weird build, probably to try to bank on that critical multiplier somehow with that 6% crit chance. So, okay. So this is the primary fire build. What I'm going to do, because I don't mix this with any external factors that increase weapon performance, I'm going to be doing this on an Inaros with no Archon shards that increase weapon damage. And I think I'm not in the right build. Yeah, I'm going to need to go on the weapon test build. So with an Inaros build that has no mods or no arcanes that affect weapon damage. And with a pet with no sentinel weapon and no mods on the pet that affect weapon damage. That way we can just test the weapon by itself. Okay, so we'll do a 10-minute Steel Path Kuva survival first. We'll show how this does against Trash and Eximuses and Acolytes. So you'll see me once in a while doing this, and this is just Inaros' ability to give himself armor and status immunity. So it doesn't actually affect weapon damage in any way. So that's the only thing you'll see me once in a while doing.
Predictable. As expected, Grenier have shut down the environmental systems, sending modified life support capsules. Use these to sustain your environment or attach Kuva catalysts to begin harvesting.
Now, of course, every weapon is going to start off a little bit weak until you get your conditionals up. So let me get some conditionals up, and then we'll actually see the power of the weapon. I'm trying to fire in like long bursts. That way I don't go all the way down to 0 on my magazine. If you actually are using the Basmu like for its healing, like maybe you're using a Warframe that just needs a little bit extra healing, the Basmu is a good choice. And if you're using it for its healing, you actually do want to go down to 0. Because it'll trigger that radial effect that will do a little bit of radial damage and heal you for the damage dealt. 10 times the damage dealt. Which seems like a lot, but I believe it's 10 true damage, and I don't think true damage can be multiplied by anything. Maybe it can. If it can, it could heal you for quite a bit. The radial attack is going to be 1.7 meters off of the target you're shooting at. So it has a pretty respectable radial. Just remember the multiplicative damage bonus is not going to get applied to those targets hit by the radial. It's actually only the target you're aiming at. I'm doing a very bad job in in staying at 1 or 2 shots in my magazine. I'm not paying attention a lot of times, and I'm just going down to 0. So, of course, if you're better at paying attention to your magazine and not going down to 0, you'll get a little bit more DPS than I am. This is a weapon that is available during Halloween. There's a few weapons available during Halloween. I think 2 are Zaws. There's this one. There is a whip, a melee whip. So yeah, this is one of the ones available during Halloween. But I believe it's also available sometimes during other events on rare occasions. I'm trying to remember because it's been almost a year now. Last Plague Star, like when they did Plague Star last year, I think they had the Basmu also available there. It was available at some point during an event that was not Halloween. It was another event that it became available. Because I remember being a little bit salty about it because I had bought like 10 Basmus to try to sell after Halloween to make some plat, and then all of a sudden it became available again, and I was like, ah, damn it, the prices are going to go down. Everyone else was buying up the those Arcanes that I think Contagion or whatever it's like a melee arcane that lets your melee shoot out and do damage. Everyone was buying those to make money. And I was like, all right, there's going to be so many people buying those to make money that I'm going to, do the other thing because, the market's going to be flooded by those Arcanes. So I'm just going to get the Basmu, and I'll make my money off the Basmu. And then like a couple months later during Plague Star, it was available again. I'm like, ah, damn it. All right, let's get Angst out of here. This is not a bad Acolyte killer. It's not a good one either. It's kind of like right in the middle. I also have to hit some life sports before I fail. Oh my goodness.
Extraction is available if you need it. Tano, extraction is ready.
I almost forgot about life sports there. I've done that in a few videos now where I've just completely herpaderped and failed on 5 minutes because I forgot life sport. Hit that last one there, and then we'll go back to the Acolyte. This is not the best and not the worst Acolyte killer. It's kind of like right in the middle. It's not going to feel too uncomfortable fighting the Acolyte, but you're not going to feel too great fighting the Acolyte either. Just directly in the middle of Acolyte killing potential. You are not the Acolyte. I think I've lost where the Acolyte is, unless he's back here. Is he back here? Is that him right there? I think it is him. Yeah, he's taking damage, so he's in that group somewhere. There he is. So yeah, I had bought a bunch of Basmus, and I think the other one was Seti Lacera. I bought Basmus and Seti Laceras, like 10 of each. And I was going to sell them. I thought I was going to trick the market. The market was going to be so flooded with Arcane Contagions that their price was going to go down, and the Basmu was going to go up. And then Basmu became available, and my plan was foiled. I really like the Basmu though. It's not like a meta weapon. It's not going to be as strong as, like, let's say the Torrid. I'm going to head to this next set of life sports because I'm going to have to hit a few. It's not as strong as, like, let's say the Torrid is, but it's still a good weapon. And because it doesn't have ammo, it kind of boosts it up. You know, if a weapon, at least me, I feel a weapon can be a little bit weaker if it gives you the utility of not having ammo and being a battery weapon. You know, like I look at the Cycron and the Nucor, right? Like the Nucor, I think, is a bit stronger than the Cycron, but sometimes I'll value the Cycron more than the Nucor because if you're using the Nucor as your main damage source, sometimes you will run out of ammo. Whereas, like, you never have to worry about that on the Cycron. So, like, there is a little bit of value of having a battery weapon over an ammo weapon. And especially, like, with Duviri content and with the new Whispers content that makes you use random stuff. What is it? The Deep Archimedia. Having built-out weapons helps because you get more chance to have a weapon that you actually have built out and it's going to do well in Deep Archimedia. You know, you can't just crutch on always having the Torrid because Torrid might not be available during your Deep Archimedia run or during your Duviri run. think I'm like sitting in the Leech Eximus pools and healing him. He's just trying to, he's sitting over there living his best life like forever. Instead of kill the trash around him. Screw him. Because this does have the radial attack, you can self-stagger yourself. So you notice I just self-staggered myself there. So be careful. So 10 minutes, we're at 386 kills. That is very average. When I do these tests, average weapons hit at about 350 to 400. So that is well in the average category. But again, I would value this slightly more than another average weapon that hit the same kill mark. Just because it has that battery. You know, you don't have to worry about ammo.
Your will was greater.
Okay, so we'll do after this one, we'll do a 10-minute Lua Conjunction. Lua Conjunction is going to be slightly higher level enemies, 180 to 200. It's going to force me to fight Thraxes, which are kind of like big Super Eximuses. Yeah. So we'll see how this does on that. Oh, and they're going to be mixed enemies too. They won't all just be Grenier. So Lua, Circulus.
These foes deserve your respect.
All right, we'll kill these two Drachmasters first. Again, I'm not going to have conditionals up, so it's going to look a lot weaker than it should be. Oh, let me show off the alternate fire here. So it kind of like chains. Does this like little chaining attack here. It's really weird, but I think it has some good potential to maybe have a good build around it. I haven't built the alternate fire build yet, but I think it has potential to maybe be pretty cool. So I'll do that either Monday or later in the week next week. So, I mean, it looks cool. It looks cool, and I think with the proper mods that cater to that fire mode specifically, it'll do better. So okay, let's get these guys dead. I actually might just spawn the map. That way we can kill easier guys.
Hurricane Middle Sentry is attempting to purge you from this place. Stand by for life support.
Those Drachmasters can be tanky. I don't want to sit there for... Especially without conditionals. They're tanky without conditionals. With conditionals, they die really quick. But if they're your only targets for, like, you know, when you start the mission, like me there, you're going to be sitting there for a minute or so trying to kill them. All right, the first set of life supports is actually right next to me, which is perfect. I like to fight around the life supports on Lua. Sometimes average weapons will fail at 5 minutes in, just because you normally get the Acolyte and the Thraxus spawning at the same time. And average weapons can sometimes struggle with dealing with both of those. Just because the more time you spend on fighting big dudes, the less little dudes you're killing, and the less of the small life supports you're farming. So sometimes average weapons fail on 5 minutes. We'll see how this one does. I don't think it'll fail, but you never know. You know, gameplay varies too. Maybe if you did 5 minutes, you wouldn't fail, and maybe I will at 5. Maybe you're better at not going all the way to 0 in the magazine like I've been trying not to, but I have consistently been doing. Unless you want the heal effect. If you want the heal effect, you want to go down to 0. All right, we're at 64. I'm going to hit that first life support just to get us to like 90, because each one gives you 30. We can hope for an early Acolyte. Acolytes can come out at 3 minutes in, I believe, at the earliest. But normally they'll come at their average time, which is about 5 minutes. I feel like I'm getting a lot less trash in this run-through than I usually do on Lewis Circulus. Hopefully these enemies aren't like stuck in another room somewhere. I'm going to hit another life support. We're at 3 minutes and 15 seconds, so the Acolyte can come in at any time. If he comes early, we want him to come early. That way we can fight him separately from the Thraxes. There's the Acolyte. Okay, so he's a pretty early Acolyte. It's good. That's good. It's going to be Violence. He's going to turn off our abilities, which is not bad. Or is he the Necros? No, it's Violence, yeah. He's the Banshee. We got his shields down. We have a minute before Thraxes come out.
Sentient scouts. If they detect you, fighters will soon attack.
Trying to keep a little bit of trash between me and Violence. That way I can make sure my Deadhead stacks stay up. If you put all of your shots into Violence, well, any Acolyte really, put all of your shots into an Acolyte, because the fight takes longer, you're going to start losing your conditionals. And you don't want to do that because that's going to lower your DPS. So Violence will die here. Okay, he's down. I got my weapon still on, of course, as is tradition. I'm going to try to get my conditionals back up before Thraxes come, and then we'll kill Thraxes real quick. I should hit 1 life support before they come at least. Maybe even 2 if I can get to it. I'm not going to be able to get to it.
The longer you hold out, the deeper I can search.
Stole my weapon at the worst possible time.
Extraction is ready.
Okay, so let's focus on these Thraxes.
I fear we are seeing the consequences of our risk now. Destroy these.
Try to get this multiplicative nature of this weapon to do work for us. Oh my goodness, Salt. You're horrible in your aim. Okay. Let's head to that group of life supports as quickly as humanly possible and try to stabilize. That was a little bit of human error there with my absolutely horrible aiming of my Raplac shots. So if I fail here, you might not have failed yourself. Okay, let's try to stabilize. I've said this before in other videos. I really need to switch to Matarai doing these runs. It'll help with the Thrax killing. It'll turn the Raplac into more of a one-shot instead of a friggin' 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shot. other life support, I believe, just spawned. So let's head over that way. Try to drag this group of enemies over in that direction. I hope I'm heading the right way. If not, this will be horrible. I am in a dead end. Okay, I did not head the right way. I should have just used my map. What did you do, Salt? Multiple human error points on this run through. So I'll fail here. I'll fail with the life support right here. Yep. Okay. So 8 minutes, got 200 kills. I spent probably the last 2 minutes like running around for life supports. The fight with the Thrax was absolutely horrible. So this particular lure run on this weapon might not have been the best like show for the Basmu that I normally do. So keep that in mind. You know, it's only 200, which would be below average, of course, but I think it could have did a lot better if there wasn't so much human error that I caused there. So I think the Basmu probably would have hit in average numbers just like it did on Kuva Survival. That's my guess. If I had aimed a little bit better, if I had used Matarai for my Rat Black instead, I probably would have gotten average numbers on my Basmu there. So, so in conclusion, I think the Basmu is a average steel path weapon, and you have to rate it slightly better just because of its battery. You know, there is a little bit of value that comes out of battery weapons over ammo weapons. So, you know, other average assault rifles in the game, like let's say like the Kuva Carrick or the Kuva Hind, things like that, like they're also really good. They also hit average numbers, you know, 350, 400 kills in 10 minutes. But they don't have that battery nature to them. And this also has the explosive, you know. Granted, it can't use Prime Shred, whereas like the Kuva Carrick and the Kuva Hind can use Prime Shred. But you're getting the radial shots instead of the punch-through shots, which sometimes is better, sometimes is worse. So that's my conclusion on the Basmu. Average steel path weapon. I think it's worth building out. I think it's a fun weapon. So yeah, that should be it for the Basmu. Thanks so much for watching, guys. If you liked it, give it a like. If you want to make fun of my gameplay there, go ahead and leave a comment. And I appreciate it. You guys have a good day.